there, Fellowship family. Welcome to your one-stop shop for all things church life. My name is Mark Francis, and I am once again your host for today. It has been fun already here during the month of January to look at the question of where was God in 2020? And just to recap, we had a worship service at the beginning of the year where we got a chance to unpack a few ministries, but not all ministries. And here today, we're going to look at the youth ministry at the church. And believe it or not, there are dozens of youth workers who pour into the lives of your kids, your grandkids, and your friends' kids here at FBC. And I have two of the top working with me here today. We have to my left, to your right, watching at home, Derrick Kekic. How are you, Derrick?
Very well. You got it.
Awesome.
You got the name right.
I got the name right. And here, over to my right, your left, watching at home, Christiane Newlin.
Yeah.
And that, you say, yeah, because I will butcher your name every time I say it.
It was close.
Close. Give us the full.
Christiane.
Okay. And where does that name come from?
Well, I'm German.
Yes.
So I don't even try to say my name in any English version. It's Christiane.
Okay.
That's why the name is so hard to say.
I will keep I'll just call you Chris for sure.
You're doing so well.
And as long as I've known you, I always feel tension whenever I get to call you by your name. Just, I don't want to insult anybody here.
You're not.
You guys are amazing. Thanks for coming here. And believe it or not, this is your all's first time in the podcast room.
It is.
You've never seen it or experienced it before. So thank you for being here. And for all of you guys listening and watching at home, continue to give us your feedback, your comments. Go to the show notes, fbcava.life/podcast. You can submit requests or things that you want to hear about. But welcome to this Fellowship Family podcast channel once again. Guys, I want to dig right into it because I want to get to know who you are first before we really unpack what happened last year. So, Derrick, give me a quick rundown of how long have you been here at Fellowship Bible Church? What do you do for a living? Tell us a little bit about your family.
So I have been at Fellowship. Our family's been here about 11 years this time. And I say this time because about 6 years before that, we were here for a very short period of time before we moved away. I've been with the state in law enforcement for over 20 years now. I started off here in Frederick County as a game warden and then went covert for a while. And then we came back to uniform here in Frederick about 3 years ago.
So for all you hunters out there, look out. He's coming for you.
Fishing, but that's where I am. That's where you'll see me. I have 4 kids. Wife and I, Rebecca, she was going to be here, but decided that Mrs. Newlin was a better option.
Volunteered me.
There you go.
We homeschool all 4 of ours. Our oldest is 18 and our youngest is 12.
Awesome. That's great.
Right in that middle school years and youth years.
Awesome. So tell us about the Newlin household.
Okay, so we have 6 children, so we beat the Kekics. Most of them are youth group age at this point. We have one still in Club 56 and one not quite to the state that she could go anywhere. But everyone else is in youth group. So when they kind of entered youth group is also when we got involved in the ministry. We've been at FBC. We moved here 17 years ago when our oldest was born, right before she was born, from Germany. My husband is from Winchester, Michael Newlin. And we've been at FBC ever since. And my husband came here before he moved. So I guess he's been at FBC forever.
You know, back in December, we interviewed Brian and Karen Newlin. And there's a funny story. I think they mentioned Michael in one of their conversations. So for all you watching and listening, you can go back and reference that Christmas tradition story about Michael. But so you mentioned real quick also that you got plugged into youth when your kids kind of became of age. How did that really develop for you guys as a family of wanting to get plugged into the youth ministry here at FBC?
We had been community group leaders for years and years. And then we added to our family 3 of our children are biological and 3 are adopted or we have custody of. And life got pretty chaotic after we did that. So community group was a little overboard we had like 25 kids in our community group, but we did want to be plugged in. We did want to like be involved and help and do ministry. And it just seemed more logical to actually do a ministry that the kids are part of rather than do a ministry that is just an additional stressor for a family that, because of the family situation, has enough stressors to start with.
Well, of course. Well, and having 6 kids of your own, I mean, what's another couple hundred in a youth group, right?
Yeah, hey,
I mean, just bring it on.
It's actually a break, It's kind of nice to do youth group on Wednesday.
Derrick, how about you? How did you find yourself getting plugged into youth?
Years ago, when ours entered or left the other side of the church from the very young kids ministry and started down on Pastor Charlie's side of the kids ministry, Pastor Charlie rope-a-doped us and told us about an opportunity to serve as a substitute teacher downstairs.
He loves getting people to serve.
Right. And if he ever asks anyone out there to serve as a substitute teacher, that is the gateway to coming on.
Absolutely.
Big time. Because, he's the gateway. And he invited us in and we bit the hook. And next thing I know, we were kindergarten teachers for years, and I think about 3 years ago, as ours started to move into the middle school and high school years, we just migrated onto the other side of the doors. Started with the youth and teaching Sunday school. I teach Sunday school every other week downstairs for right now the 9 o'clock class, and then I'm involved in the middle school small group and really enjoy doing that.
That's awesome. I mean, Pastor Charlie has a knack for not just rope-a-doping people, but essentially finding the gifts of people and their strengths. And you guys are fun, outgoing people, and I'm sure you're great with youth, and it's a natural fit. I mean, I can tell you guys have a passion for being around kids, and not just being with them, but leading them and pointing them more towards Christ.
It is. And Pastor Charlie, had he not have asked us, I don't know where we would have ended up plugged in, but it was a pointed question. Can you serve?
That's perfect. So as you mentioned a little bit of kind of the teaching that you do with the youth, Christiane, what's your role with kids? Are you part of small groups with them?
Yeah,
do you do things?
I'm co-leading a small group.
Okay.
A high school small group.
Good. Well, give us a quick synopsis. There might be people out there who A, don't have kids, or B, have not been around during a youth Wednesday night. And let me tell you, sometimes it looks like craziness if you're here on a Wednesday night. And let's talk pre-COVID, because 2020 was just hard for a lot of different ministries and all of us around for the community. But what does a typical youth night on a Wednesday night look like for kids who would show up? Just paint a picture for the ministry as a whole on Wednesday night and Sunday morning.
Sure. I'll take Sunday morning, and I'll let you take Wednesday. So Sunday morning, we have a youth service. Pre-COVID, we were broken down by age groups. So essentially, it was 7th and 8th grade, 9th and 10th grade, and 11th and 12th grade. And we have Sunday school teachers for each of the church hours, so a 9 o'clock and a 10:45, and we had a curriculum that we would go through each year and then flip it so that in the 7th grade or the 8th grade year they would get both sides, the A side and the B side of the curriculum, and then in the 9th and 10th grade years they'd have a separate curriculum, 11th and 12th. That was pre-COVID. Post-COVID now, we've kind of flipped that over, but we have our main teaching focused hour is the 9 o'clock hour for the youth pre-COVID.
Okay.
The 10 o'clock, 10:45 was more of a conjoined. It was a 7th grade to seniors.
Give me an example of some of the things you guys are teaching and talking about.
Pre-COVID, the 7th and 8th grade, we went through the Bible from Genesis through Revelations, and did what was a video series, very similar to some of the other video series where they would give a synopsis of the book, and then we would teach kind of the main theme and give them each a bite of an apple from each book, and then show how the Bible everything is intertwined together. And what you see in Genesis, you can see again in Revelations, and everything is kind of tied together. And that was kind of the 7th and 8th grade year, and then 9th and 10th was different.
Yeah, neat. So, I mean, youth ministry happens on a Sunday morning. We hear what that looked like. So Wednesday night is the key night for youth really to come on their own and gather and do their own thing. Walk us through what a Wednesday night typically looked like.
Okay. So, and it's still somewhat the same, I would say. So there is Wednesday nights. Some of the nights are considered large group nights.
Okay.
So all of the youth, which is a ton of kids. Do you have a guess how many? Like 100?
It's hundreds.
Whatever.
Yeah,
it's a
hundreds.
lot. It's a lot.
Over 100.
Yeah.
Well over.
150, 200.
Yeah, because I know just on a Wednesday evening at the Pearsons, there's at least 40 kids.
That's big.
So large group night, they all gather and normally start out with a game. There's a team of teens that are responsible for like coming up with a game. So they do a game together, and then there's also like a talk on certain topics. They might focus on something for a number of weeks, and that's more topical, wouldn't you say? Like it's like,
right.
I think we did things on depression and anxiety. I mean, just kind of things that for that age group that, you know, bring up questions, and we even there is a chance for like teens to kind of bring out the ideas of what are they struggling with, what are the questions.
Yeah.
So it's more topical talk. Like I think the last few times we've had like video games or, you know, I mean, just whatever seems to be like a current and important theme for the youth.
Yeah.
There's a worship part to it. And then at the very end, they all split into their small groups for a short time to talk about what was presented and for a short prayer time. So that's kind of what large group is like. And then there's small group twice a month where I don't know how many small groups we have. Do you know right offhand, Derrick?
I'd say there's over a dozen small groups, and they're broken down. They're broken down by age as well.
And
They
boys
try
and
to do
girls.
like seven
right.
grade girls or eighth grade boys. And then, so the sizes of the small groups kind of differ, and it also the attendance differ, but it could like what you were saying. I mean, anything between 10 and 30.
Right. Yeah. You have one of the large.
We have one of the larger groups.
But it sounds like fun.
I actually, like, I have a little thing for small group nights, I have to say. I feel like that goes a lot deeper, and the kids know each other and they ask questions. And
you were a community group leader, so it makes sense. It's that as you get larger, you've got to get smaller.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I also feel like the kids really connect within the small groups. Like you can come to a large group night, and if that's all you attend, you will get lost in the masses. But you start really clicking into a small group, and that's where you kind of see beyond the first impression. And
it's a microcosm of the church as a whole, just like what you said.
Right.
In order to really feel connected, breaking it down to smaller groups, smaller setting. I mean, we come to a church this size and you see hundreds of people in a worship center, and you kind of can back away, especially for those introverts of the world like me. Sure. I'm gonna run for the hills. But when you start to get to know people more one-on-one, one-on-two, and that's where I think teens are going to gravitate towards that authentic relationships. And you guys can help drive that.
Yeah, those small groups travel from 7th to 8th to 9th, all the way up through high school. And then we're finding that they're staying lifelong friends, which is really important.
Yeah. Well, 2020 caused the world to come to a screeching halt. And part of the reason of have this discussion is to be an encouragement to those who are watching and listening to say, let's open the curtain, look behind the scenes, because a lot of times out of sight, out of mind. I mean, we went as a church 10 weeks without gathering. Everything was online. And then in this slow regathering process, what was really going on behind the scenes in the youth ministry? And I'll ask both you guys that question, because I know it didn't stop, but share a little bit about what was going on with maybe phone calls or conversations or Zoom, things like that. Kind of walk us through that. Derrick, I'll let you start that.
So it did feel like it did come to a stop almost, from activities that were planned and moving forward. We were getting ready to head towards going to our large middle school outreach or youth event, JAM, which is up in Philadelphia each year. everything just came to a stop. And then, those of us like me who had never even heard of Zoom or, internet chatting, got introduced, baptized by fire into this.
Sure. Yeah.
So we quit everything and then restarted everything and tried to keep things as normal as possible. So we had small groups, and we did the small groups by Zoom, which worked for some and didn't work for others. We found that some persons just had nothing to do with Zoom, and some groups, my daughter is in Miss Newlin's and Christiane's, and they would be on for hours on their Zoom. So we did Zooms. Then as things started to relax, which again, we kind of had a slinky effect on things. As things relaxed, we came back and had some summer gatherings, some large group events outside, brought the kids back together, similar to what the church was doing on a Sunday. And then, things contracted again, and we kind of broke up again, and then rejoined probably in September and started re-meeting and kicked off into our year this year where we are. So
that was kind of what was really happening. Christiane, walk us through what was going on in the hearts of kids during that time of COVID. Were there any kind of stories? I'm sure small group, you want to keep things confidential, I understand, but what did you see going on with the youth during that time?
Well, like Derrick mentioned, like our group, my group really did well with the Zoom. Like most of them stayed really involved. I know some of the groups struggled with kids kind of not knowing what to do with this. And not that they couldn't do the technical side of it, but just not having this interaction.
Yeah.
For me, and I call them my girls, they they're in 11th, 12th grade. They want to see each other. So I think that was hard. We did kind of come up with ideas. We did our Zoom every 2 weeks, and they pretty much all showed up. And we even had a girl that moved away. That was actually a nice thing, that was able to join back into her small group because we all of a sudden did Zoom meetings. So she was part of our Zoom meetings again. And she was there the whole time until she graduated. So that was a nice thing that wouldn't have been possible under normal circumstances. But we also, because there was such a need, there was definitely after a few weeks, the girls were like, we need to see somebody. And so we kind of came up with ideas. Let's all drive up to Dairy Queen in our cars, get a Blizzard, and then we'll meet in the parking lot, and we'll put our camp chairs right next to our car, or we'll sit in the car and open the door. And we had a small group meeting in cars, and we just kind of parked in a huge circle. So, we came up with things just to kind of meet that need of seeing somebody in person and not just seeing a screen.
Sure.
So, there wasn't a whole lot we could do right there in the spring, but there were a few things we came up with.
Good. We all were there once in high school years and years ago. I'm not going to date ourselves here, but, being a teenager in the society today is difficult. It's challenging. And then you throw in where you can't meet with your friends and there's difficulties and things like that. And Derrick, walk me through. What did you see with maybe some of the boys?
With ours, with ours. And so because I lead a middle school group, their lives came to a stop as well. So a lot of them are in public school, and some are homeschooled, some are in private schools. But when that stopped, their entirety of seeing folks stopped, and then everything kind of lurched towards online. And so you had a difficult task of kids spending all this time online, and you would then say, okay, we're going to also do an hour Zoom meeting for church at night and hope to gather some type of community. And initially it was tough. We had a tough time. And for a lot of us, we found that we did large group Zooms also. So you would have what seemed like several hundreds, I don't know how many it was, on the large group Zoom. And that was a neat time because you got to see how much they needed interaction, and they were able to, kind of talk and break out into chat groups and chat rooms and still have some fellowship with each other in a biblical base versus just sitting there learning from their school online. But it was a tough time.
Yeah, I get that. I have kids also, and in going through that concept of I remember you guys, we walked through these focuses as a church, right? And one of the very first ones was synced of the technology kind of concept. And here we are now saying technology is going to benefit us to grow spiritually. So it's not that technology is bad. It's how are we going to use it for our benefit? So for parents to say, okay, get off your screens, let's limit screen time. But school is doing that, and now church is doing that. That's a lot inundating the kids.
We found it tough also because, between middle school and high school seems to be the age that the kids end up getting a phone or have an iPad. And so you'd have multiple family members that couldn't meet because they didn't have a way to get together. So sometimes you would have, when it would be large group, they could all be on a screen. And you would have screens that in the background, you would see 4 different persons from a family on there. It was nice.
But I can see how that's really encouraging to then swipe your Zoom meeting and see the dozens of faces and dozens of people who are participating and interacting. At least makes you feel that you're connected in that sense.
It was. And that's how it did connect us back together, I think, initially, and bring some normalcy back.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we all kind of, there came a point where we were like, we're so zoomed out.
Right.
Like, we are so done with Zoom. But, reality is that was such an awesome tool to stay connected, to not all of a sudden, there was a way to see each other. There was a way even to chat with each other, to pray with each other. I brainstormed with my spouse before I came over here. He was helping at the youth too. And he said that his group, the attendance was pretty much down compared to what it is in person. But he said really because of that, it seemed when they did do their studies, that the kids actually went deeper and that their relationships grew over Zoom, which is an interesting thing to say. But I think because it was a smaller group and then the ones that actually attended, like that was the feeling he came away with, that it has actually helped kind of the part of the group to grow closer and to go deeper in the studies than they did before.
That's great.
So,
I mean, I can see the pros and the cons of the Zoom, and we call it the Zoom.
The Zoom.
And as I've been interviewing and talking to other ministries, it's all very similar stories of how it's scary, but we started to use it, and we can see God working through the technology, through the difference of the days and the difference of the time that we went through last year, and how we've adapted to still grow in our relationships with each other and our relationships with God through the difficulty. And I'm curious, as leaders, as you went through this time together, what did God show you in the midst of 2020? How did God show up in your life personally?
Yeah, I would say initially just, this knowing that, hey, I don't have to fear. I have a God that I know is in control. So I was able to just walk freely and not fear this, invisible virus. But for me, with the youth group, I saw how important coming together in a community of both worship and study and just interaction through friendships and sharing life together, how important that was. And not just important to me, but important to the kids, because you could just see my household, the 4 kids there, the excitement on Wednesday when they were going to get together with whichever small group they were a part of or the large group. And so that necessary, and that God created us to interact with each other and not to live distanced, but to interact and then drive each other closer to Him through being closer with each other.
It's almost as if the need was shown to us shown to you in a greater way, to have that relational component with each other and with God. Yeah, that's great. Christiane, how about you?
So the question is more towards youth group, or
how did God show up in your life? What did He teach you specifically last year, whether it's youth or not even part of the youth group, but just you as a leader? I mean, what was God teaching you to impart to the kids?
I don't know if I have such a, like a 1 or 2 sentence answer, but definitely kind of, just to see that there was a way to continue ministry and to continue to reach out. God didn't just step back when Corona happened.
Right.
But He used it, and, He obviously I think none of us would have expected what happened, but having been around the corner for a while, history happens when you're alive. Like there's history has happened during my lifetime before, but I think for our kids and youth group, this was new, and just to be able to walk through it with them was amazing. To see, to come up with creative ways to do fellowship. That God allowed that to happen, I thought was a really cool thing. As a family, it was interesting. All of a sudden, having 6 kids home, nothing. I homeschooled some of my children. Because of their special needs that they have, I never volunteered to homeschool them. But it also, because life kind of came to a halt, the way we could invest ourselves into our kids over the last few months would have never happened with regular school.
Yeah.
Spiritually speaking, educational, like I would have not volunteered for the things I had to do over the last few months. And I feel like that's the same with youth group. Like we came up with creative ideas of how to create fellowship when you're not really allowed to be close, physically close.
Yep.
So
I've heard story upon story upon story saying just that, that as a family unit, the mom, the dad, the kids were able to do new, fun, creative things together in the home that they normally wouldn't have done. And that's that I'm speaking for myself also. That was our case. And to hear you emphasize that as well, to know that, okay, God is using this for his glory. Yeah. And it might look different to our little small eyes that we see. And it might change and abrupt our life. But other things are happening, and just how families are able to worship together on Sunday mornings, or how families are able to have meals together when that might not normally happen with the chaos of business of life going back and forth. Sure. So those are the stories, and so you emphasizing that, I'm just emphasizing again to say that it's not just you, and I know that around FBC that was the case. Derrick, as you were talking, a verse came to mind for me of just the relational component of ministry. Hebrews 10, 25 or 24 and 25, it says, "And let us consider how to stimulate one another to love and good deeds, not forsaking our own assembly together, as is the habit of some, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day drawing near." And the day is drawing near, and we might get prone to not be around one another, might get prone to have the virus be an excuse, but find ways to be creative in this world today to have that relationship and have church, have small groups, have youth group. I think it's valuable.
Right. No, absolutely.
And hearing your stories as a testimony to that is encouraging to me. And hopefully it's encouraging to you guys at home or listening as you're driving down the road, however you listen to these podcasts. Sum it all up. Where do we go from here for youth ministry? So we kind of talked about what happened pre-COVID. We talked about what happened in 2020. What can parents or grandparents or the viewers of FBC expect for youth ministry in this coming year?
Right. So we just had a meeting this past Wednesday between the leadership team. And so our youth group through COVID was able to really focus on developing leadership teams. And so we've got some new activities getting ready to come up. We're going to be doing some specific outdoor activities, tubing trips. Their jam is going to take place online. So they're going to do some type of a evangelical teaching. We're going to do our apologetics team, our youth-led apologetics team is going to do a focus on worldviews in movies. And we're going to show a movie here and be able to use it to teach from. And so some creative ways of getting together. We've got actually got a missions trip planned this summer. If Lord willing, they're going to do it in the U.S., but it's still going to be a great trip. So I see us moving forward, coming back to some type of normalcy and regathering all together and continuing.
That's neat. Anything to add on your end? That's a neat summary.
Big picture. I do think some of the nice things that have come out of this is that the kids have come up with their own creative ways to create fellowship. Like they have started to do disc golf. Just meeting up in the park. Like we have done tubing trips because you can social distance in tubes.
Yep, right.
We've done Corona camping where like everyone had one tent.
Not during a snowstorm, but
This weekend was
warm again. It's got to be warm again. But we did this, and I feel like there is there's some of this has really grown. Like, the kids have done, like, there's a bunch of boys that show up that are all in one small group regularly at our house, and they run through the woods together. I mean, it's like developed through Corona. It's like, so I think there's new ways that they have learned to like fellowship together and to create even fellowship beyond youth group that at least I did not see like that before Corona. I feel like this is definitely, there are new things that the kids have started with each other.
That's neat. Well, thank you guys for being in the front lines, because I'll be honest with you, I don't know if I can handle kids week in, week out, and the energy that they bring. You guys have to match it, and I can see you guys match that energy. But it's having fun, but pointing them to Christ all at the same time, and allowing them to grow in their faith on their own individually, apart from a church telling them what to think and what to do and believe in. So thank you guys for doing that. And all under the leadership of Pastor Dennis McNutt.
Absolutely.
Also Caleb Pearson. Any of the shout outs of other people you want to give out there?
Oh, there's too many to name. It's awesome to be involved in.
It takes a village to run the whole thing.
Absolutely.
And so there is plenty of ministry happening in youth behind the scenes or in the foreground of what you might be seeing here at the church. So thank you guys for participating. Thank you guys for just being a part of this podcast, but also for what you do here at FBC. And again, as you guys are watching and listening, continue to connect with us. There will be more stories and more encouragement of what God is doing at FBC in the weeks to come. And we always want to hear from you. So continue to let us know what you want to watch, what you want to listen to, who you want to hear from, and we will try to make it happen. But it's all about what God is doing in the hearts of our body. So until we meet again, let's let Christ be the focus of your life each and every day.